Yeah.
So one of the things that the Lord has really been speaking to me about is how we've entered this season of second chances.
Hmm.
And it was crazy. He was, downloading this word about second chances to me and people being able to right the wrongs of their past and pick up their destinies and their callings
Hmm.
and to reverse the curse, really, that they had been living in or living under. And I happened to get in my email and realize that that day was actually the Jewish holiday of Second Pentecost, or not
Wow.
Pentecost, Passover.
Okay.
And I was like, Second Passover? I didn't even know that the Hebrews had Second Passover, but it was the one that they celebrated. Um, so 30 days after the original Passover, um, the Jews that wanted to celebrate the feast, but they couldn't because they were among the dead and they were considered ceremoniously unclean. God gave them a second opportunity to partake in the second Passover. And it's right smack dab in between first Passover and Pentecost.
Mm.
And then I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And then I get on my Facebook app to go post something about it. And I see this article about how that night on Second Pentecost, there was a super rare blood moon eclipse that was going to be passing over the United States of America. And with the eclipse, there was going to be left this little red ring around, the that we could see left of the moon. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the heavens proclaiming that this is a now word for the United States of America. And I
Mm.
knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that it had to do with reversing the curse of Roe v. Wade on our land.
Mm.
I had been praying and interceding for that. But on May 3rd, the word that I released was about God. I had had an encounter when I was in Denver getting ready to preach, and it was right before Mother's Day, and the Lord came to me and he started speaking to me about, hey, Mother's Day is coming, because he's just sweet and he's relational.
Mhm.
And I always get sad around Mother's Day because I miss my mom.
Yeah.
And instead, he started speaking to me about this big surprise that he had in store for many mothers that was going to be coming this year. And then right after that, we literally right after that and right before Mother's Day, we heard about this draft opinion leak from the Supreme Court
Yeah.
about how they had essentially decided to overturn Roe.
Mhm.
And my whole mind was blown. And I'm like, what? Yes, this is like the best Mother's Day ever, right? For
Right?
so many of us. I mean, for
Yeah.
me personally, I have two babies that are in the cloud of witnesses that
Mhm.
were aborted. And so this is great news for me.
Yeah. Well, and especially with what you're doing and what God has put on your heart to do, which is, the cloud cries out, Speak Life, the Speak Life Project, Speak Life Initiative, however you guys say it,
Yeah.
which is all about interviewing women and letting them tell their testimony. And there's been a lot of healing that's taken place as a result of that for these women.
Oh my gosh, radically, radically.
Yeah. And so it's amazing because that was the other thing. Everybody's going to know this watching who watched last Friday's, but Jesse Green also had talked about how what God is doing right now is raising up the one of you guys, Illumination, is it the Esters? Is that what she said? Do you remember? Um, but it's basically the women who had abortions that God is calling them forward. Number one, to get healed, obviously delivered, but
Hmm.
then to, carry that testimony forward. So, and
Yeah.
I started talking about what you were doing on air. I was like, yeah, my friend Christa is doing this amazing thing. So yeah, Rise of the
Wow.
Esters. So
Yeah, it really is. And I believe Elijah List had published a word that I had released back in January or February about this great women's movement that was
Mhm.
going to be coming to the forefront this year. And um, I had also released words several words. It seems like since 2020, really, most of the words that God has given me, there has been something that He has said about the issue of abortion or Roe v. Wade being overturned. And I know that I'm not the only prophetic voice that's said that, but this really, there's God is raising up women in an unprecedented way right now. And when I was asking the Lord, what is the highlight? Why are you highlighting the women in this season, God? Um, he started showing me like the attacks of the enemy on biological womanhood, you know what I mean? Like, and on children.
Okay.
Um, he said, Christa, before there was ever an original Jesus movement, before there was ever an original John the Baptist movement, there were two mothers singing over their wombs and prophesying over their sons.
Mm-hmm.
And my mind was blown. I was like, oh my gosh, you're so right. That's so true. And then he took me to Genesis, where, you know, he specifically, when he cursed the serpent, he said that there would be enmity between the seed of the woman and between the serpent, because it would be the seed of the woman that would crush the serpent's head, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the devil hates women and he hates the unborn in the womb, because he knows that it is through us we give birth to God's, destiny, his dreams, his inheritance. The Bible says that human beings are the inheritance that God has chosen for himself,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so he knows that God comes through us because we're living gates, we're doors, right? And we're going to be the ones that, usher in the second coming of Christ. And so anything he can do to murder and destroy and distort or
Mm-hmm.
counterfeit, he's going to try to do.
Yeah.
And we are getting really close to the end times. Now I'm one of those people. I believe in victorious eschatology. And so I believe, really my belief is that, yeah, things are going to be crazy, but the world is going to continue to be filled with God's glory. And there's going to be a generation that rises up that violently takes hold of the kingdom and brings it, manifests it into earth, just
Mm-hmm.
like Jesus prayed, you know, God, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why the enemy wants to stop all that. But
Yeah.
this thing with the women, I'm actually in 2 weeks from now, I'm getting ready to host a huge women's summit in Knoxville, Tennessee, because the Lord told me to call the warring women of Zion and to heal the mourning mothers, so that they can take their place on their cultural mountains of influence and to begin to prophesy and to sing over their spiritual and their natural wombs, and to prepare people for the children that are going to be coming out of Roe v. Wade,
Mm.
that would normally be aborted,
Yeah.
and to prepare to love on women who are going to be in crisis situations when they find out that they're pregnant. But it really is, the Lord told me, he said, Christa, it took the Father, when even Jesus, when he was baptized in the Jordan, right, the heavens opened and he heard the Father's voice speak over him, this is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased. Like, fathers always impart identity.
Mm.
But then he said, Christa, Jesus didn't start his public ministry until his mother called out the prophetic destiny that I had placed inside of him.
That's really good.
And he said, so this is, mothers give birth, they comfort, they nurture, and then they challenge their children to manifest the prophetic identity and callings and destinies that God the Father spoke into them.
That's
And
really good.
yeah, and so this is, and everywhere you look in our society today, it's I mean, it really is an attack on our identity where everyone's in an identity crisis
Hmm.
to the point where people can't even say what is a man and what is a woman.
Right. Yeah. Well, and to kind of go off of that, a couple of years ago, I had started to take note of this, and it wasn't we weren't quite where we are now. But it was a lot. I started to notice there was a lot of emphasis on a lot of different personality tests. Uh, and I don't have it really any issue with it, I guess, but like the 23andMe thing where it was like,
Yeah.
I talked about this on my first episode with Micah Turnbow, I think, is when I actually talked about it on a little an Elijah Fire episode. But thanks, Christa, for the recommendation of Micah Turnbow.
Isn't he awesome?
Yeah, he's great. And but I said that I started to notice that there was a big emphasis on identity, and there was
Mhm.
an identity crisis starting to come about, and now we're starting to see that it has accelerated significantly since I first had that revelation. I assumed where we are now would have been 10 years from now, or 10 years from there, from when I first saw this. So
Yeah, and it's to me, I'm seeing what God is doing in like some of my meetings, and watching the way the Father's heart is just blasting people with love and with identity.
yeah.
And we are so ripe for massive harvest of
Mm.
souls, like massive.